morning, everyone. I can see that people are still having a good time getting to know one another, but we've been asked to get the program going because we're a little more than a few minutes after 9. So just checking, can everybody hear me, including that last row up there? Can you raise your hand if you can hear me all the way up there? Terrific, because we always worry about that. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Innovating Global Peacebuilding, which is the 10th anniversary of the Peace Center here at Chulalongkorn University, or as we affectionately refer to it, Chula. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to have you all, and I know we still have a few people coming in, but that's just terrific, and they'll come in and we'll just keep going here. So for those of you who might be surprised that I would be sort of measured and a little labored about naming our event, there's a very good reason for it. You know why you're here, you know what this event is, but there's a very good reason. Aside from many wonderful, unique things that are going to happen at this gathering over the next 2 days, one of the innovations that's taking place is that this event is being live streamed for the next 2 days. And so there are 3 cameras that are placed around the room, and so everything that happens in the room will be shared with people far and wide, including our Rotary Peace Fellow alumni and others who will be able to access the event through the rotarychula.org site. Now, that's important for us and for the purpose of this event, but it's also important for another reason. Apparently, this is the first event from the center, and either the first or one of the first events that has been live streamed from this university campus. So that's an exciting thing. Also, the event will not just be live streamed, the event will be recorded. And so whether we're in the main auditorium and having plenary session, or we're in the breakout sessions in the innovation labs, all of the events will be recorded, which is a nice feature of the event. It's certainly worthy of a 10-year celebration. And at the end of the conference, there's the expectation that a book that will be produced from the proceedings. So these are great things to celebrate in this 10th anniversary year, and we wanted to make sure that everybody who might be watching live at the moment really gets the full flavor of what we're doing here. You know, hence the careful use of words. The title, Innovating Global Peacebuilding, says a lot about what the entire event is going to be like. And I'm going to share a few things that are really innovations about the event in a moment. But I think the title itself is sort of our first clue that this is not going to be a conventional conference. And as the organizers have said, it's not conventional in the sense that this is a conference that is taking place in an academic setting, but the event will be both academics and practitioners. The event is orderly. There's a very clear agenda for the next 2 days, but it's also organized to be very spontaneous. So there'll be lots of sort of dynamic interactions, unexpected conversations, unpredictable and adaptive sorts of things that as we go along over the next 2 days. It's also not the usual conference in that you're going to hear lots of individual voices, but there's the assumption that we are individual voices and plenary sessions and breakouts and innovation labs that are really part of something much, much bigger. And the much, much bigger is 1,000 Rotary Peace Fellows that now exist around the world, and also the support of an organization called Rotary International, which is 1.2 million members around the world. And so everything that happens with us in these rooms for the next 2 days is really part of something much, much bigger. So again, not your ordinary conference, because 1.2 million members of Rotary and 1,000 Rotary Peace Fellows around the world will be paying attention. So that's the first clue, or those are some of the first clues that this will be an interesting and innovative and unusual conference in and of itself. The second clue is the fact that I am providing the opening remarks for the conference. So the second clue to this isn't your typical conference is I am a Rotary Peace Fellow. I am part of Class 13, which is part of the Professional Development Certificate Program at Chulalongkorn that took place and graduated in 2012, the summer of 2012. That, in and of itself, is not particularly unusual or innovative, but my name is. So my name is Patricia Schaefer, and aside from being a Rotary Peace Fellow and graduate of Class 13 in 2012, I'm a Rotarian, but I'm also not only known as Patricia Schaefer. So the people who were in my cohort also know me as Trixie. So that's a little unusual to have a speaker telling you her name is Trixie. But yesterday, one of the members of the Rotary Peace Fellow alumni who's here said, oh, why don't we just go ahead and change it again? You're not Patricia or you're not Trixie, you'll be Patrixia for the next 2 days. But then what got added to that is that I have the honor of being your MC for the next 2 days. That also is in and of itself unusual because this is not a usual conference. I will not be a traditional MC. What I've really been asked to do is be more of sort of the angel on your shoulder, the whisperer, the person who just sort of makes sure that we all know where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be, or, you know, for those of you who remember that funny little paper clip that used to come up on our computers to say, hey, I've got a tip for you. I know how you can use your system better than you can use it. I'll just be that voice that says, hey, there's something important that's about to happen, or let me introduce this next important speaker or session. So angel on the shoulder versus traditional MC. One thing that is traditional that we certainly have to do before we really get underway is to give thanks. So, you know, often you give thanks in the midst of a conference or at the end of a conference, but I just came back from South Sudan, where one of the things they shared with me about the culture in South Sudan is that you never start something until you've really given your full appreciation. So for this 10th anniversary celebration of the Peace Center here, and for the theme of innovating global peace building, and for the fact that we can be here and we can stream live and we can record these events and we can produce a book out of them and we can share our ideas and experiences, I just want to be sure that we give thanks to, first of all, the people who imagined 10 years ago that there would actually be a Rotary Peace Center at Chulalongkorn. We owe them our thanks. We also owe our thanks to Rotary International, because it is Rotary International and its 1.2 million members and its foundation that actually enables the peace centers to exist. And in fact, members of Rotary International who are quite passionate about all the peace centers around the world have been working hard on building up a sustained endowment that ensures the sustainability and the lifelong endurance of the peace centers. So we owe them our thanks. And of course, we certainly owe thanks to Professor Surichai Wun'gaeo and the staff of the Peace Center who have been burning the midnight oil to organize this conference, and with the support of Jen Weidman, who's played a tremendous role too. I had a chance to visit the center last night about 5:30. I left at about 7:30, and they were still working hard to put this amazing event together. So before we really get underway, let's just thank everyone, from the people who originally conceptualized the Peace Center and Peace Centers, to those who underwrite it and support it and sustain them, to those who've been working so hard to bring us together this morning. So for those in the room, you have an agenda. For those who are not in the room, you don't have an agenda. So we just want to take a moment to quickly say what's going to happen over the next 2 days that is innovative. So over the next 2 days, you're going to find that the event is full of plenary sessions on a variety of topics. There will be 8 breakout sessions on 8 different topics over the next 2 days. There's a very interesting endeavor that will occur called Innovation Labs, And you in the room are invited to propose ideas that you think are innovative in peace building and you think are worthy of discussion. This board behind me is a place where if you have an idea for innovation, you'll be able to post your idea on the board. You can post the location in one of the rooms back here that you would like to discuss the innovation. And you'll be able to say why your innovation is interesting and you're proposing people come and discuss it with you. For others, and by the way, if you're going to propose an innovation idea, be sure to do it early in the morning when we have a break or as we're headed to lunch or during lunch, because that will give people a chance to consider what innovation labs they'd like to participate in the afternoon. So that's something that will happen over the next 2 days. I mentioned the 8 breakout sessions. I also want to note that at the end of the 2 days, there will be a full-bodied action planning session, which is important and innovative in and of itself, to go from ideas and inspiration and explorations of innovations to actually going into action planning mode. But perhaps the last opportunity for innovation out of this Innovating Global Peace Building Conference really should and will occur after the conference. So we mentioned, or I mentioned, that there's the live streaming, there are the recordings that we're doing, there's the book. But for the people in this room, it occurred to me as I was reviewing the fact that there are 355 Rotary Peace Fellows who have now graduated from this center. There are nearly 1,000 Rotary Peace Fellows around the world now. There are 1.2 million Rotarians. The Rotary Peace Fellows just from this program are from 70 different countries, the people in this room and the people listening in, 70 different countries. And if you really track their experiences and where they've worked and the industries they've been involved in and the people they know and the connections they have, then perhaps the real magic and the real innovations will come after you leave this conference. You share the experiences of this conference with the vast networks that you have. And if you believe in 2 degrees of separation versus 6 degrees of separation, then perhaps really there will be magic in the room for the next 2 days and an incredible level of magic beyond. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Emeritus Professor Surichai Wun'gaeo, who's going to provide our opening remarks. He's a gentleman who really doesn't like to spend a lot of time on backgrounds, so I'll leave it to him to just introduce himself and provide his remarks.
Thank you, Trixie. Good morning and Swadee Krab. Excellencies, Ajahn Shui Meng, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Professor Amara, Gunakana Nilapaichit, Rotary Host Area Coordinator representing the Rotary supporters of our event, Mr. Andrew McPherson, and esteemed friends. The most important people today for us are alumni who are with us from all the way from many countries. About 22, 23 who have made the time for us. May I say, this is, when you came here, it's a bit new. For me, this is my first time to stand here, this building. So please bear with us some issues of some inconveniences. But please allow me to say a few words. The world is constantly evolving. The human race is continually confronted with new challenges. Recent series of violent actions calls not for reactions or revenge, but calls for going beyond. It is my honor to welcome all of you from all over the globe to celebrate our 10 years Together we celebrate the collaboration between Chulalongkorn University, Rotary International, and under the far-sighted initiative and moral leadership of the then Rotary International President Kun Bhichai Rattakul, who will come a while later. The establishment of this center aligns with our university's policy to make focused efforts to be responsive to public needs nationally and globally, acting as a world education gateway. As we look back, our ever-growing legacy lives on in over 350 Rotary Peace Fellow alumni from 70 countries across the world who have made meaningful impacts in the field of peace building. Our theme today, Innovating Global Peace Building, therefore intends to act as a bridge between theory and practice in the field, while also exploring the work of our Rotary Peace Fellow alumni, as well as colleagues from ASEAN and beyond. The prospect of gathering together to celebrate and commemorate the achievements of peace builders worldwide through the sharing offer us this great hope and inspiration for the future. I, together with my former director, Professor Amara Pongsapich, who is with us here, would like to extend our gratitude to the alumni and speakers of this conference who have worked hard for peace within their own contexts and have accommodated the busy schedules to share with us on this special occasion. A special thanks to our keynote speakers, Madame Shui Meng, the wife of our esteemed and respected colleague, Ajahn Sombat Somporn, and Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, for sharing their stories and experiences. Also, there are many more names to be mentioned, including Dr. Cynthia Maung from Metao Clinic at the border of Thai and Burma, who has worked for the last nearly 30 years tirelessly within the context of very difficult issues. With all this wisdom and experiences, we hope to be broadened and deepened in our understanding of the challenges for our future. As Chulalongkorn University prepares to celebrate its 100-year anniversary in 2 years' time, this is part of our institutional reflection of the values and importance of engagement with civil society and other sectors. With the new grand challenges of the post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals, Chulalongkorn University cannot but focus more on the strengthening of the co-production of knowledge and as well as partnership strategies for our common future. May this conference serve as a catalyst for new connections, new ideas, and new innovations to cultivate and mature in the peace-building community and beyond. Thank you very much. Yes. I also need to say that Patricia kindly accept this MC, while I also help her as another MC. We have benefited a lot also with the help from our staff, particularly Jen Whiteman, who has been, please have an applause for her. Now, as an MC, I would like to inform you we will have a documentary, very short one, how the last 10 years has meant for us you will see some familiar faces. And after that, I think Trixie will come up. We will have the panel up here, yes. Please have the documentary show. While getting ready, Stephanie, our intern from Canada, has been very much devoted to this task of preparing this documentary for us, interviewing several people for this special occasion. Please.
Rotary International approved this program because the concept is this great concept, but how we can make it possible. So big worries about this. How Rotary International approved?
Rotary, has tremendous support from its 44,000 Rotary clubs with 1.2 million members scattered around the world. No other organization working for peace and conflict resolution has this kind of support. It virtually guarantees the continuity and success of the program.
Kun Bhichai, who served the past president of the Rotary International, has been very instrumental and very important for the birth of this program.
He started his idea, talking to Chulalongkorn University, proposed this program to the Rotary Foundation. And after 3 years, it became reality.
I have to say very frankly that I have been gratified from the very beginning when the board of RI gave the green light to go ahead and when Chula agreed with this.
It started with a small office and crowded classroom. After a few years, moved to a new location, a bigger office, a spacious classroom.
Here, this little young seedling of a project sprouted in a few places. And I think the fact that it's grown so much to be so influential.
We really provide all the possible inputs, experts, field trip, interaction for the fellows. So I think this, we can be proud of the 300 fellows that have gone through this program.
The good thing about this program was that within a span of three and a half months, they actually had a good combination of both theory and practice, wherein we got to visit the field, speak to practitioners, speak to policymakers, and at the same time get introduced to new innovative thinking around tools and methodologies that need to be employed when working in conflict and post-conflict societies.
In the classroom is one thing, but it's always good and interesting and exciting to bring people out to see the reality, and I think that is a good thing to do.
I think the program is one of the best opportunities in the world to help bring together professionals who are trying to advance difficult social change related to peace and conflict issues in their societies.
What sets the Rotary Peace Centre here apart, I think, is the long and impressive record that many of its students have when they arrive in terms of raising peace perspectives in a whole range and variety of different places, different times, and that's a real strength of the groups here that I've met over the time I've been coming here.
This program is unique that it opens people of different background, of high quality, but with a common concern on how peace and conflict and violence mitigation could be a shared point of learning together for the future.
Why I signed up for this program? Because I realized there was a need, not only for me, but also a need for my country, a need for the women I work with, because I felt that I needed more skills.
It's exhilarating just being with the kinds of fellows who come here. They're so diverse, as we all know. But also they come from different fields. And I think it enriches the field of conflict resolution when you have that kind of diversity of people coming.
I think sometimes in the universities it can get a little bit sealed off in the lecture room. Here it definitely doesn't.
From day one, I've been wowed. Every day is a surprise. Now coming to class every day is something I look forward to. Sitting down among 17 other talented citizens of the world across all continents.
Whenever I was teaching at the Rotary Center here, I always felt a nearly unbelievable high level of energy and interest in the room.
The most rewarding part about when I go to meet these Peace Fellows at the airport is seeing them so enthusiastic about coming to Bangkok for 3 months study.
Learning across the borders, learning across sometimes the mental borders, more important than just territorial borders.
So there's been, I think, a massive, exciting learning curve, collectively and individually.
Interestingly, the subject that I'm teaching now was not a part of the program when I was a fellow. And I think the program has morphed and grown. It's become far more leaner, far more focused.
And it's truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, is the fact that there are so many different people from around the globe coming together.
In fact, I feel that because there's teachers rotating every week, they become, in a way, their peer teachers to each other throughout the 2.5 months.
And so that process alone, I call it the unwritten curriculum of the program, because you won't find it written anywhere, but it's truly one of the major registers of learning for us here.
So it is an absolute honor to spend some time with people that need training in certain areas, but that are absolutely pushing the boundaries of this field in practice.
It's an incredible opportunity for me as an instructor in the program to be able to interact with people working on the front lines in Afghanistan, or Kenya or South Sudan, but in the US. And so the diversity of participants and the change they're already affecting and what they'll do as a result of this program, I think is incredibly unique.
Well, I think for the fellows, it's wonderful to have access to all the different teachers and professors as resources, you know, even as they go back to their professional lives.
These fellows, when they return home, if they could resolve some conflict in their country, in their community, even in their village, even in their family, I would be happy.
One thing that you cannot escape is that at the end of this program, you have developed a psyche of peace. You cannot deny the fact that this program impacts you.
At some level, I didn't know how much I could do. I didn't know how to frame a lot of the things that I was doing. And I certainly wasn't nearly as courageous as I am now. And so much dropped away after being at the Rotary Peace Centre.
This program, the program in Chulalongkorn, helped me is to be able to look critically at situations and think broadly.
One of the wonderful things about the program was learning about the kind of work that I've done in Aceh and in Afghanistan and in Kosovo, but in other contexts, meeting other peace-building professionals and learning from them.
While in the Rotary Fellowship program, I learned so many conflict resolution methods and models, which have changed my lifestyle and way of thinking.
This program, it has sharpened me. For me, when I go back to my country, stand up for these women and tell them this is where we are supposed to go, this is how we are supposed to do it, this is where we are supposed to step up and see how we can be able to become leaders of our country.
And pretty much I come towards the end of the program when I'm doing this session, and I do find that in my conversations, there is, you can feel that peace has percolated into their systems. So I think that is a big benchmark or hallmark of success of the program.
I think Rotary can be very proud of having built these beacon leading centres.
It was finding a way to bring some of those concepts into our everyday life, you know, do no harm, understanding of the process of conflict resolution, that everyday people can be agents of a more peaceful world.
Even in a small place, if you could resolve conflict, it would serve the purpose.
Would you give big hands to Stephanie Van Pelt, who is, would you stand up, Stephanie? She's, okay. The young, lovely intern from Canada who has been producing this. Please allow me now to move into the next program with the keynote, the first keynote for us. But I should like to introduce to the chair, Professor Dr. Amara, who has been a professor at Chulalongkorn University for the Department of Anthropology and Sociology, Political Science. After the deanship of Political Science faculty, she became appointed as chair, director of this center, my former director of Center for Peace and for this Rotary Peace Center. After that, 5 years ago, she was appointed again as higher necessary, the wider responsibility for the human rights. So for the National Commission of Human Rights of Thailand, she has been the chair of the commission until last 1 or 2 months. So may I now invite Professor Amara to share this session for us and invite also the speaker, Madam Shui Meng, please.
Thank you, Jan Surichai. I thought I was supposed to be introducing the keynote speaker, so I'll do that. I'm very honored to be asked by Jan Surichai to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Shui Meng. Actually, we met before, a few months after Sombat disappeared. Dr. Shui Meng came to attend some workshop or conference in Bangkok, and we had the opportunity to organize some get-together, and that was when I met her. At that time, we were very eager to help find Sombat. Everyone was so active and hopeful. That was 2012. Now, 2015, we are still pursuing that goal. We did not give up our hope, and we are still working very hard to try to find him. I asked her how she would like to be introduced. She said, tell the audience that she's a retired sociologist whose life had been interrupted after the disappearance of Sombat. Right now, her main activities involve doing what she wanted or feel that that need to be done. One being what we call Sombat's initiative. That's campaigning for Sombat's return. many of us are still campaigning, and we take every opportunity to get together to do something to achieve that goal. Another activity is to advocate all governments to sign and ratify the Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance, CED. This convention is quite new, relatively new compared to other conventions. It was adopted in 2006 and opened for signature in 2007. Believe it or not, Lao PDR signed in the year 2008, but only signed. When to approve the convention, you need to sign and then ratify. Only sign 2008. In ASEAN, Indonesia signed in 2010, Thailand signed in 2012, and surprisingly, Cambodia exceeded. That means they did not sign but approved, ratify in 2013. In ASEAN, only 4 countries had been involved in this convention. So we still need to work very hard to push or to encourage government to sign and ratify the convention. And Sombat give us the reason to do that. So with that introduction, may I invite Dr. Shui Meng to come here and give her keynote speech. Please don't feel that you are forced to have to finish in any definite fixed time, but feel free to relax and don't be pressured. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Amara Pongsapich, for the introduction. And thank you to Professor Surichai Wun'gaeo for inviting me here. Distinguished guests and participants, I'm honored, really honored to be invited to this very eminent gathering of scholars, Rotarian alumni, researchers, civil society workers, and peace activists to give this opening remarks on this very important conference, Innovating Global Peace Building. When Ajahn Surichai extended his invitation to me to speak at this conference, I wondered what would I have to say to such an eminent group, and especially on such weighty issues and topics as global peace building. Over the last few years, and especially after my husband Sombat Sompon was disappeared, I have only had one thing that engages me. I've devoted all my energies to try to find out what happened to Sombat. I have lobbied with the Lao government, with regional and international human rights organizations, with the United Nations, and also with friendly countries in the region and beyond to help me to lobby with the Lao government to give answers to what happened to Sombat and to find him and return him safely to me and the family. But with Ajahn Surichai's encouragement, and after reviewing the proposed agenda, I boldly accepted the invitation to address you all today. I thought to myself, I myself may not have much to say on many of the weighty issues to be discussed here, but I believe that Sombat, if he were here to be with us, he would have something to say. And I believe that Ajahn Surichai would have invited him to participate in this meeting, just as Ajahn Surichai had in the past invited him to participate in many of the Chula conferences, and especially as they deal with regional issues. Sombat was invited, for example, to the Asia-Pacific Intellectual and Chula regional meeting in Chiang Mai, and also to many other conferences organized by Chulalongkorn University. I will now try to share with you some of Sombat's thoughts and visions and his lifelong work and experience in promoting sustainable development education to advance peace, social and economic justice for all, and especially for the poor and disenfranchised. After many years of working directly with the rural poor and powerless in Laos, it became very clear to Sombat that peace is not just an absence of conflict. Peace for Sombat is a state of harmony starting with the self. That is harmony from within. And from the inner self, that harmony should encompass harmony between people and between people and nature and between societies. To have such a state of harmony, Sombat believes it has to be built upon a strong foundation of just and sustained well-being and secure livelihoods for all. It has to be built on a new vision of education, an emphasis of balance between material and spiritual well-being, and a system of governance that is based on rule of law and respect of rights for all. In preparing for my talk today, I went through many of Sombat's notes and writing expressed over the years in different fora, inside and outside of Laos. And almost uncannily, I found that Sombat's vision and ideas of peace and development were summarized in Sombat's last public speech given at the opening of the Asia-Europe People's Forum, just 6 weeks before he was disappeared in front of a police post. So please allow me to share with you in a little more detail about what Sombat talks about in terms of building sustainable peace. Sombat believed that the greatest challenge and the root cause for the disharmony in many of our societies and in many global power problems that we face today lies in the neoliberal underpinnings of the global economic system and its overly dependence on technological advance to support economic growth, which tended to enrich the minority and impoverish the majority, and to the detriment of the environment. He noted Generally speaking, the human race has made enormous progress in science and technology in the past century. We have built better and better infrastructure, systems of communication, watered the deserts, sent a man to the moon, advanced medical science, and also built enough weapons of mass destruction to blow up our planet if we want to. In the process, and without doubt, our lives have been physically and materially improved. We have become more comfortable in many aspects of our living. In fact, sometimes too convenient and too comfortable, especially for the majority of the people who live in the developed West, but also for the well-off who live in the underdeveloped parts of Asia and Africa. For the poor and disenfranchised, the benefits of progress have yet to reach them. For example, take food production. Food production has gone up worldwide, but unjust systems of economic development and uneven distribution means that the rich are consuming more food than they really need and are getting obese, while 6 million people still go to bed hungry every night. Somebody sees this single-minded pursuit of technological advance and economic growth has robbed us emotionally and spiritually. And because Sombat is a Buddhist thinker and an engaged Buddhist practitioner, he feels the lack of spiritual anchoring has undermined our inner growth and is the root cause of disharmony and unhappiness for us as individuals and for many, many people, young and old today. He said, emotionally and spiritually speaking, we have not done so well. There is so much greed and so much corruption, so much intolerance and bigotry, and so much violence that prevail in many of our societies. Our improved physical comfort has actually weakened our minds. We have become less caring, less compassionate, more self-centered. We let our emotions rule our heads instead of relying on our intelligence and wisdom. We let our selfish desires and pursuit for immediate gratifications blind us to what is really important and essential for our personal happiness and for the well-being of our families and societies. Sombat then went on to point out what he thought had gone wrong. He said, I strongly feel that our poor education system and badly conceived development model has gotten us to this state. Our modern education system, or rather schooling, is modeled mostly from the West and is quite divorced from reality. It is too compartmentalized and segregated, focusing on technical content and not adequate attention to developing critical thinking and analytical skills. Teachers are more interested in getting to teach the curriculum instead of getting children to think, analyze, and learn real skills which are connected with their society, culture, or nature. As a result, young people passing through the school system know a lot of facts and probably are highly skilled in using social media and other forms of technology. But they have generally very narrow and a limited view of the world. They have become more and more like robots who only know how to produce and consume. However, proper education should be an instrument that increase our ability to use our intelligence to the full potential, and should also be a way of promoting compassion, tolerance, and interconnectedness in our society. With compassion and tolerance comes peace of mind and a true sense of self-worth and confidence that will help to reduce stress, strife, anxiety, anger, and hatred. I'm sure that if he were here, he would be very, very pleased to meet many of the alumni who spoke in the film. That is what he's talking about. And I want to congratulate the Rotary Peace Center for providing young people with these opportunities to share and learn and to promote peace. Sombat also says our development model is not balanced, not connected, and definitely not holistic. We focus too much on economic growth and ignore the negative impact of social, environmental, and social disintegration. The unbalanced development model is the chief cause for inequality, injustice, financial meltdown, global warming, climate change, loss of biodiversity, and even loss of our humanity and spirituality. For example, we know that global warming and loss of biodiversity are taking place at alarming rates, and yet we are unable to find a binding solution on curbing CO2 emissions among nations. This is a clear indication of a crisis of wisdom and human spirituality. We are blinded by the power of money and let the corporations rule the world and even override the power of the state. Ordinary people and civil society have very little to say in all of this. Their voices are not heard loud enough by government and by corporations. At the World Summit on Environment in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, a 16-year-old girl told the world leaders that if you do not know how to fix the planet, please stop breaking it. 20 years later, there's little sign that our leaders are fixing the world, and they are not, and they are definitely not stopping at breaking it. He went on to propose some actions that we can take in order for us to get out of this mess. He says, pointing fingers will not bring us together. Asking the industrialized nations who are now already consuming 3 to 5 planets to care and share more will not work. They have been addicted to a way and style of living for so long, they will not easily want to change. Asking the development nations who now aspire to have the kind of lifestyle of the developed world to change will also not work. They do not want to be left out of enjoying the material benefits and comfort which have been denied them for so long. So, to get out of this dangerous stalemate requires 3 major changes. First and foremost, it's necessary to transform the present power structure. We cannot afford to allow the big corporations to continue dictating to our governments the kind of investments they should make. We cannot continue to have governments to listen only to the power of money and the voices of the rich. We need them to pay attention to the voices of people and society. These 3 states, the state, corporation, and civil society, should work together on a more equal basis and with mutual respect, and shift the course of discussion and development to a more balanced form. This should be done regardless regardless of where we live. As human beings, we share life with fellow human beings. We can work together in solidarity and harmony and come together with our minds, hearts, and hands to learn, to share, and to take some collective actions to overcome the political, social, economic, and spiritual problems and challenges. For concrete actions, he proposed we can start by creating allies among CSOs locally, regionally, and internationally. We can create allies with sincere people in government, in corporations, who are not just blinded with the power of money and not just concerned about the next election or the next financial year. But there will be allies who will be interested in the long-term good of society. Secondly, we need to shift our thinking and to adopt a different model of development. The new model should stress a balance and connectedness between the 4 dimensions of development, namely the economy, nature, society, and governance. Thirdly, we need to give more space for ordinary people, especially young people, and allow them to be the drivers of change and transformation. Ordinary people, not politicians, not the rich, and not the CEOs of major corporations in any society, form the majority. They have to take the voice of the majority and to heed their needs. Listening to the voices of the young is especially crucial. Their ideas and aspirations for sustainable development should be given due consideration. After all, the future should be theirs to make. If Norbert were around, he definitely would have more to say, and he will have much more to do. I can only hope that he will return to us safely one day and to be part of our global community to innovate for global peace building. Lastly, you will find some of this maybe outside. This is a brochure that summarizes his lifeline as well as what happened on the fatal day of his disappearance, which was caught on camera. I thank you for your attention and your patience. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Doctor. You said that when you were issued the invitation, you boldly accepted it. And it's also obvious from your remarks that when you accepted it, you were willing to speak boldly. And so we thank you for that. That's probably one of the defining traits of what the Peace Centers try to be, a place where different people with different experiences and different voices will speak boldly, and even if kindly, and speak the truth that needs to be heard. So we thank you and thank your husband for the words that you've shared. In the video, we heard 2 Rotary Peace Fellows say things like, at the Rotary Peace Center, when I went through the program, it felt like a wow every day. And I learned things that I didn't know I was capable of. And you heard Dr. Norbert Ropers say he felt like when he came to the Peace Centers, or every time he comes to the Peace Centers to lecture, he's met with an amazing amount of energy and interest. That energy and interest is part of what keeps the energy of the Peace Centers vibrant and special, but it's an energy and interest that isn't sort of naive or ill-informed. It's often from the scholars that Peace Centers hear from and the participants who are at the Peace Centers themselves and the work they do, quite grounded, quite well-informed, born of experience, but the kind of experience that still allows for experimentation and innovation, hence the the spirit of this conference, innovative global peace building. So innovation that comes from knowledge, but being willing to learn and adapt and adjust and constantly look for new forms of peacemaking and peace building. The plenary session that we are about to experience, led by Dr. Norbert Ropers, really is formed in that vein, or formed in the spirit of grounded experience, years of experience that still allows for the energy and interest to innovate and learn and adapt and reform forms of peacemaking and peace building. The title of the plenary session is Evolving the State of the Art, Insider Peace Mediation and Building. And one of the things I asked Dr. Ropers, who is sort of beloved icon and lecturer in our program, when you say insiders, peace building and mediation, essentially what is it you're trying to get to? What is the heart of it? And the heart of it, as he summarized it for me, is for the longest of times we thought peacemaking, peacekeeping, and peace building was something that you do to others. You assist, you serve others. And the evolution is really to think of peace building as something that is a hybrid. It's a hybrid of support and partnering and collaboration, but it gets at the heart of bringing forth the voices and the experiences of the people who are experiencing the heart of the conflict. So this plenary session will focus on that, and we welcome Dr. Ropers and his esteemed colleagues to the panel.
Dear organizers, distinguished panelists, dear former and current Peace Rotary Fellows, dear peace scholars and activists, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure and honor to guide the next hour with our panelists here, who all have a lot of experience in research and practice in the field of peace building, and to address one topic which has taken some prominence, particularly in the last 5, 10, 15 years, and that is the topic, how do we balance the engagement of more or less well-wishing outsiders and the people living in regions and countries of conflict, the insiders who are primarily affected from conflicts. How do we link these two, the outsider engagement, the insider engagement, in a constructive way with each other? One of the key figures in our field, as most of you will know, Johann Galtung, when he created in the 1960s and made prominent, at least among interested scholars, the term of peace building. For him, peace building related to the insiders as well as to the outsiders. But when the term of peace building was made prominent in the world arena, which was particularly in 1992 by the then Secretary General of the United Nations, introducing the need for peace building. At that time, more focused on post-conflict endeavors. At that time, it was mainly focused on the engagement by international actors and actors from outside. But our field has then, over the last 25 years, step by step, insisted that this would be a too limited picture only to look at what can be done from the outside. So step by step, scholars as well as practitioners started to think more systematically about what is the proactive role which insiders can play in these conflicts. Because at the end of the day, they have to pay the price for the conflict. Their co-citizens are, in most cases, the drivers of the conflict. And so, step by step, the field of insider peace building and particularly insider mediation became a prominent term. And right now, one can say that all over the world, at least the academic discourse clearly emphasizes without the involvement and the proactive engagement of the insiders, it's very difficult to settle conflicts. Now, having said that, what is also obvious is there is no clear-cut separation or dichotomy between outsiders and insiders. Many conflicts are driven and are addressed in a more constructive way by people for whom it's often difficult to say, am I an insider or an outsider? So you have the diaspora, you have the people who had to flee the country, who go back to the country. You have people coming from outside who stay for a long time in these countries. So this distinction got blurred. And now, if you look at some violent incidents around the world, let's just look at Paris or Beirut or Mali or Bangkok, you see, is it really clear who is responsible here and who can play a role to overcome, to transform this violence? So I think that this insider-outsider dimension is a crucial dimension to look at, to improve our knowledge, our skills, and our contributions as peace activists, as peace scholars, as peace builders to be effective. So that will be the focus for the next 50 minutes. And we have 4 colleagues here at the panel who have all collected their specific experiences, having been outside the scene, sitting to my right. I'm not giving you a detailed bio because you can read it in the document of the conference. What impressed me, and we meet here for the first time, from your bio is that you really try to combine knowledge and expertise in various fields, particularly in law and in sociology, with your very personal engagement, particularly in Asia. And I'm happy to have you as the first speaker here. To make our panel here effective, we have agreed among each other that each speaker will not take more than 10 minutes. And please don't be upset if I remind you of that, so that at the end we can still have about 15 minutes to ask you from the floor to put forward one or the other comment or question. Are you ready to start, Christine? Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, and welcome, and thank you for the invitation to be here. What I'd like to do in my 10 minutes is to give you a brief introduction to my organization, the Mindanao Peace Building Institute, that's located in Davao City, Mindanao, Philippines, and to tell you a bit about our innovative approaches to education and training and the Pacific. With the consequent escalation of tensions between these different cultural and religious communities and the complexities of political and strategic interests of regional and international actors for the hearts and minds of the people of Asia point towards the urgency of transforming mindsets and building the capacity of grassroots peace builders for social transformation. It is within this context that the Mindanao Peace Building Institute seeks to contribute towards promoting peace building in Asia Pacific through training and education, research and documentation, and networking. The Institute explores major themes and cutting-edge debates in areas such as conflict transformation. Its strategic approach to peace building is the Institute's main strength and unique characteristic, since it understands training not only as a tool for development of skills and acquisition of, but also strengthening relationships and peace-building activities at the grassroots level and beyond. Its 16-year track record, practitioners have the potential to promote social change. Since its inception in 2000, MPI has trained over 1,900 peace practitioners from around the world in its annual training program, and 48 indigenous tribal leaders that have a prescriptive approach to teaching. While it is important that some material be presented systematically in lecture form, MPI's facilitators rely on laboratory activities, discussion learning. MPI views the instructors as learning facilitators responsible for creating a learning environment where the participants will learn not only from the facilitators, but also from each other and from their own experiences and perspectives. Learning is mutual and dynamic, where facilitators and participants are both teachers and learners and all have the responsibility to contribute to and be fully engaged in this process. MPI creates a safe space where all peace builders, regardless of gender, faith, ethnicity, culture, gather together to learn and understand basic concepts of peace and ways to resolve conflict and share and articulate their own truths and opinions, their questions and aspirations freely and without fear. MPI facilitates an empowering process to transform lives, renew commitments, and invigorate individuals to continue their journey to building peace wherever they may be. And with that, I would like to give you a few examples of what, as I said, of insider partial mediation in Suban and tribal communities in Mindanao. I would like to emphasize that MPI primarily trains grassroots peace builders, community development workers, and civil society members. Thus, these are the people on the ground that are engaged in the conflicts in communities and who play a part in resolving them. That, I would say, often mean they would be insider partial mediators. My two examples concern conflicts among leaders of the Subanan indigenous tribe in Mindanao, some of whom have been participants in our resource-based conflict and peace-building training program. In 2013, in the ancestral domain of Bayog in Zamboanga del Sur province, there was a major leadership conflict among 3 Subanan organizations, one of which was headed by Timoy Manda, an MPI scholar and a well-respected leader both within the tribe and within the local government system. Another key actor in this dispute was Endive Antuman, an MPI female scholar and respected member of her community who took the initiative to mediate a resolution of this conflict. By tradition, women act as mediators, and thus she exercised her traditional role. She was joined by Timoy Manda, who was a party to the conflict, who fully cooperated and took steps to get the parties together for a face-to-face meeting, which eventually happened. This process was aided by a Subanen women's NGO that provided the logistical support to resolve the conflict, in a way playing a role as an insider, partial mediator, or facilitator. Another key factor in the resolution was the clan relationships, since all the leaders were Subanen. Now, the second example concerns another Subanen community in Zamboanga del Norte province that involved a conflict between Datu Isis, who was the respected leader of the tribe and the head of the Ancestral Domain Council. He was also an MPI scholar, and Barangay Captain Taglanan, that emerged due to their differences as to how they wanted to relate to mining concessions in their communities, an area that is very rich in minerals such as gold. There were efforts to unseat Datu Isis as head of the Indigenous Peoples Organization of the Sindagan Ancestral Domain Council and undermine his authority by holding an unscheduled election in which Taglanan was voted as the new chair. This instigated a leadership conflict that lasted over 5 years, with two factions present in the ancestral domain where there was much mistrust and many intrigues. The conflict was resolved without a formal mediator, and there were three important elements that contributed towards the resolution. First, the two protagonists were related. They were first cousins. Second, Datu Isis kept the lines of communication open, even during the conflict, that served as a doorway to reconciliation. Third, instead of antagonistically dealing with the Tingnalan group, Datu Isis and his council preferred a peaceful and sober approach and welcomed the opportunity for reconciliation when Taglanan recognized his mistake and extended his hand as a gesture of asking forgiveness. In addition, Datu Isis's skills for conflict resolution were developed and enhanced by the Subanen Women's NGO and our resource-based conflict and peace-building training program. I will end here and look forward to our questions and answers where we can more deeply talk about these examples and your experiences as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christine, for this interesting example, which in my understanding is somewhat very complementary to the Rotary Peace Course, with an emphasis on the community level, with bringing together people from the region. So there is a significant difference of experiences, but a lot they have to share with respect to the cultural proximity. And you can use that as tools, as values, which make your mediation efforts among or by the insider partials rather effective. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Reverend Dr. Maung Yin, sitting to my left side. Again, no long story about your biography, just to mention that we have met before. Maung, you always impressed me very much with your combination of expertise in theology and, on the other hand, your very practical engagement with the different groups in conflict in Myanmar. And you started this work pretty early, when it was much more difficult than nowadays to engage in this work. So I'm looking forward to learn from some of your experiences.
distinguished Rotary Peace Center personnel, scholars, researchers, peace activists, alumni of Rotary Peace Program here in Chulalongkorn University, and Dr. Norbert, our facilitator, and our fellow panelists. I'm greatly honored to be invited to be as one of the panelists this morning in this program. I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to my friend and colleague, Ajahn Surichai, and also my colleagues in Academic Committee of Rotary Peace Center, maybe who have named me to be invited in this panel this morning. It is a wonderful privilege and again, a great honor to me. First of all, I would like to present a little bit about my institute, namely Myanmar Institute of Theology. It was established in 1927 and registered in the government as a seminary, and later it has become a premier institution in Myanmar. And our Peace Studies Center, sometimes which people confused with Myanmar Peace Center, that was established only a few years ago. But our Peace Studies Center was established in 2006, 1 year later when the Rotary Peace Center began here in Chulalongkorn University, and we are looking forward for our 10th anniversary celebration next year. We established Peace Studies Center when the word peace was a dirty word, that not everybody is allowed to say it aloud under the successive military regimes in Myanmar for nearly 60 years, almost all through my life. Well, and Myanmar Institute of Theology remained as a premier seminary, as a graduate school for a theology program with master's and doctoral, conferring master's and doctoral degrees. Then in the mid-90s, we were disturbed by looking at the decline of quality education in our public universities. We don't have any private universities in Myanmar since 1962, only the public universities. And we thought about, as an academic institution, what would be our responsibility, what would be our role to promote quality education. And therefore, not without fear, but with adequate courage, I would say, we decided to begin the liberal arts program without asking any permission from the existing military government, because we knew that if we asked, the answer would have been no. So we decided to take risks, but we were very much convinced this is not for the Christians and the churches, but this is for the society, for the future generations. And we will take students, regardless of race and religion, to come and study in our liberal arts program, which began in the year 2000. And we just celebrated the 15th anniversary of this liberal arts program in MIT. Well, fortunately, we were not disturbed or had taken action by the government, because it seems like they didn't deem us as a threat to the status quo. So the liberal arts program, together with theology program and Myanmar Institute of Theology, thrived and flourished. And in 2006, again, we began to think about what peace means in our country. The message of peace, the understanding of peace, all through the successive military regimes, was so different from our understanding of peace. First of all, the military government named themselves as Peace and Restoration Council, and the word in Burmese is quite a bit frightening. In Burmese, it says "Nyeng Wo Pi Pya," which means quiet, crouched, crushed, and flattened. And in English, they spelled it out that as peace. It was so disturbing. So we decided to establish the Peace Studies Center in Myanmar Institute of Theology with the intention to disseminate the authentic understanding of peace among our people. And we know that we have to begin this awareness from bottom up, since it was impossible to reach the political elites, the military generals, to talk about peace in those days. Well, since then, Peace Studies Center tried to disseminate the understanding of peace on the basis of the religious understanding, Christian scriptures, Buddhism, Islam, Hindu, and even the primary religions. We as an known as a religious institution. Through our curriculum, both in theology program and liberal arts program, through our activities of workshops named as Women for Peace, Youth for Peace, Ministers for Peace, where we conducted workshops on human trafficking, especially for youth, domestic violence for women and men, of course, and conflict transformation, especially for the ethnic ministers who have to participate in the mediation process between the military government and the armed ethnic groups, and also through various other programs, literature and seminars, forums performed sponsored by Peace Studies Center in Myanmar Institute of Theology. Well, it is not very easy to mobilize people especially the masses, when things have to be done very much discreetly so that we would not be deemed as a threat. But we continue to do our task, taking risks. Yes, there's fear always in the back of our mind, but because of the support we have in the country and from the international communities like Rotary Peace Center here in Chulalongkorn University and many others. It was indeed very much encouraging for all the supporters who support our work, although seems like small and trivial, but the people who support us do not think that it is something small or trivial, since we mobilize people to disseminate this understanding of lasting peace, which I listened to our keynote speaker this morning, to create harmony within us to begin, and then in the society, between the people and nature, of course, and especially towards the reconciliation, the harmony between people and the military government. There are a lot of issues that we addressed during these almost 10 years within ourselves and also with our partners internationally. I'm glad that Christine also once was in our institute and came to talk with us about our Peace Study Center, and now we collaborated working together. So insiders and outsiders, also with Mennonite Central Committee of North America, also with Baptist Peace Fellowship of the United States and Canada, and so forth. We have been working together, addressing the issues that many years these issues were forgotten and never have been touched or addressed by many of the stakeholders in the country. I think I should stop here since our facilitator is reminding me the time is almost up, and looking forward to your comments and questions after this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maung. I think a strong message you gave to us is how important it is in light of a misinterpretation of peace by powerful authoritarian forces to uphold the transformative force of peace as a force for working towards nonviolence, justice, tolerance, and all the examples you gave which made it so effective in your country to move forward. I also took from your presentation that it is very helpful if in conditions under which you lived to have inside as well as outside support, because together they are more powerful than if you only have support from one of these forces. Now let's move on to Johannes Siebert. His bio you can also read in the brochure of the conference. Hannes and I know each other since a long time, and he has always impressed me with his creativity, coming from a difficult country which had to make use of a very long struggle, South Africa, to move from an authoritarian state to one in which now the chance for democracy and some level of peace, I would say, has been created. And Hannes has taken a lot of insights from this difficult process in South Africa to contribute with the development of a concept which is now called common space and which is implemented in several conflict countries and regions around the world. Hannes, I'm looking forward to your presentation. Hannes will make use of some slides which you already see in front of you.
Thank you, Norbert. And thank you for the invitation to share some of these experiences with you. I think I've been doing this now for 35 years, and I think every country that we go to, I think we become students again. I sat in a UN capacity building strategy meeting a few weeks ago, and they were looking at what should be trained in several of the countries the UN are engaged. And, you know, reflecting with them, it was always fascinating to me is that there was not a single country that I went to over the last 35 years that they were not peacemakers already there. And I think that's one of the key things that one have so often a concept that we need to go and bring peace to a country. Peacemakers is already there. What they need is they need people to walk journeys with them, to reflect with them, to stand with them in times of difficulty, and also where they can learn from each other. So, as Norbert already explained, I'm South African. So what you have in me is an insider who become an outsider and still stay insider. So I'm not exactly sure where the inside-outside with me work, but a week ago we were in Helsinki and we brought the 5 common spaces together that developed over the last 15 years. And it was really fascinating how they become outsiders inside their own processes, outsiders when they reflect with others on their processes, and then jump back into their own processes. And it was a really wonderful experience and so enriching, because each one of us who are insiders, who are experiencing our own conflict deeply, and even those that are outsiders, whether you are in the United States or you are in Europe right now, or you are in the Middle East or any other country, we all experience conflict. So to some degree, we are all insiders. And to some degree, we are also outsiders when we are walk journeys with other people. But I've had the privilege over the last 15 years to witness an emergence of several unique Track 1.5 initiatives following long periods of civil war, governance system failures, political instability, or during intractable conflicts. These spaces served as safe spaces for confidential dialogues or as support mechanisms and safety nets for formal and constitutional change processes. What was unique also about them is that the development of each of these common spaces was determined by the dynamics of the conflict, the depth of the broken relationships between the groups, the failures of existing constitutional and governing instruments, competing interests, and the breakdown in communications. In this presentation, I will briefly cover 5 countries for you. If we look at these 5 countries, Sri Lanka had an active civil war of almost 3 decades. Nepal had a civil war of about 11 years. And it recently, after 7 years, only able to finalize its constitution. In Lebanon, you had a civil war for 15 years. And in Lebanon, in the Beirut Common Space Office, you have a common space for Lebanon and a common space for Syria. And Syria is already in a civil war, which has now become a proxy international war where everybody is bombing them for the last 5 years. In Burma, which is the longest, or Myanmar, which is the longest civil war in the history of the world, you've seen an extraordinary depth of peace-building initiatives, as already explained by the previous speaker, over the last several decades. And the current mechanisms that you've seen emerge in Burma was really standing on the shoulders of an extraordinary depth of peacemaking over the last 6 decades, which actually I think Burma saw one of the first formal national dialogues in the last century. And the last one we'll cover quickly is Cyprus, which saw what they would call a comfortable conflict that it's now. It was a very violent conflict at one stage between the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots over the last more than 40 years. So these are, as you see, these were all very long, protracted conflicts, very difficult conflicts that emerged. But what was really fascinating was the emergence of these spaces within the context of these conflicts, either serving what the common elements of these spaces, what we've seen, if you look at the change process overall, from ceasefire negotiations to peace negotiations to actual national dialogue, then constitutional making. If you look at the formal processes that we usually see in the news, the formal negotiations, the elections, the constitution drafting, the national dialogue, these spaces emerge as safety nets and accompanying mechanisms for a change process. If you look at each one of them, the longest one of them is Sri Lanka, one that is now almost 15 years in existence. The other one is Nepal, which is 10 years, and Lebanon is now 5 years. So you see each one of them have gone through several governments. The Sri Lanka one went through 7 governments, a civil war, and is still one of the safety nets that is supporting it. And same with Nepal, where these accompanying mechanisms, when they were created by all the parties together, remain the support and safety net mechanism for confidential dialogue, for shared knowledge creation, for options generation when there's a deadlock inside the formal negotiations, or for when we have a stuck situation in each city. Where are you going where parties have there's no punishment for a wrong statement. We're not punished for sharing an idea. We are exploring ideas. In negotiations, you're not exploring ideas around the formal table. There's a punishment involved. There's a trade-off involved. There's a negotiations involved where the stakes are incredibly high. What you've seen emerge in these common spaces is spaces of creativity and innovation and shared knowledge development, where shared knowledge is not just research, but also an exchange with each other on what are the best ways out. You've seen in many Western countries or many developed countries the development of think tanks, which is this party think tank, that party think tank, my think tank, your think tank. These different ideas, what you've seen in these mechanisms is they come together, where they think together. They don't have the space for it. They obviously reflect inside their own parties, but they also are coming together in reflecting with each other. And that, I think, was one of the wonderful elements of experiencing of once this happened, it will flourish. I think Norbert and I were at several stages over the last 15 years very skeptical about some of them, whether they will survive if there's no money, if no donor fund them anymore. Many of them survived without money. They carried on because there was a real belief that this is what needs to happen. They wanted to make sure that this process can go on. And what we've seen in Lebanon, the national dialogue, the formal national dialogue, carrying on for 10 years. It breaks down every 2 years because you're in a very violent environment. The neighbors are very aggressive. And internally, you are on a volcano. So your formal process keeps breaking down. It's one of those countries that functions better without a government than with a government. So it's a paradox to say that, but that is the reality for that small little country boxed in a very strategic area where there's constant war around. But they needed a mechanism that when this formal process is, whether it's government or parliament or national dialogue fall, there's a mechanism to catch it. There's a mechanism that accompany them in a non-formal way where people can move forward. I am not going to go through all the details because I promised Norbert I'll keep with the 10 minutes. There's some key elements of what drives the design. This will be available for the conference organizers, and then also design fundamentals to consider that we learned over the last 15 years from these processes in terms of political legitimacy, collective understanding, and the main focus of these spaces are not reaching agreement, but reaching common understanding. which is a much deeper level of an agreement. Because agreement is agreement on positions. A common understanding is a common understanding of our interests, of our basic human needs, an acknowledgement of those, and then to explore with that common understanding where we move to the next phase. And then there's a shopping list of what we've collected from these 5 ones of what they are being used for in their different contexts. So the One Text initiative in Sri Lanka experienced more than 20 years of negotiations, broken promises, and eventually a civil war. And this initiative of Sri Lanka, One Text initiative, emerged particularly as a safety net to gradually bring the parties together and move towards generating options that can help them at least cope with whatever mechanism they have in place. Because in 2003, the formal negotiations between Norway, Norway facilitated between the LTTE and the government, fell apart, and then you had nothing. So, and you basically had a situation where you're running towards an open civil war. So what is the mechanism that catch a process like this, where at least even during the civil war, people can keep talking and you establish communication mechanisms between them. So the key element that they talk about in their process is based on confidentiality and trust, tolerance and patience, dialogue process, lobbying, problem solving, agreements, and the shared future processes. They have a very detailed development of a dialogue process. I'll walk you quickly through that you can see. This is Nepal process. I have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to stop in the middle of this quickly. This is Nepal process. The Nepal process was mandated by the cabinet itself before the king, the Maoist, and the parties enter negotiations. And it was particularly created as a safety net and preparations for the formal national dialogue. And it outlived the formal national dialogue and still the main safety net for that process. It has 5 different dialogue forums today that functions. In the Lebanon case, the national dialogue was created as a technical support mechanism to the national dialogue. The common space was created as a technical support mechanism to the formal national dialogue. And because the formal national dialogue had to deal with Hezbollah's arms, the Palestinian arms outside of the camps, assassinations and very tricky situations of war, they couldn't deal with the root cause areas. So what you basically saw in the common space in Lebanon was dealing with the fundamental root cause areas that they could support. And to give you an idea, they then brought together the players from the parliament, the national dialogue, the government and civil society into this common space to carry on this ongoing non-formal dialogue. Very complicated process today, dealing with 4 permanent dialogue forums at a non-formal level, supporting the different constitutional instruments in their process. In Myanmar, you've seen the development of 7 common spaces in different states, because Myanmar is preparing for a national dialogue that will hopefully start later next year. And because of the complexity of the Myanmar society and the fact that you had many different independent kingdoms before, the ethnic demands is very huge. And many states, you still need to show your passport as an outsider. So the demands of these ethnic groups would not necessarily all be met in a union national dialogue. So that was the need to create state-based dialogues. And for the support of the state-based dialogues, you saw the development of the 7 common spaces to support that. The last one that I touch on briefly is the Cyprus one, in support of the Cyprus dialogue that's mediated between the UN, by the UN between the Cyprus Cypriot, Greek Cypriots and the Turk Cypriots. They've created a very complex process where they brought 94 different organizations together into a dialogue to facilitate that process in support of the overall process. Very fascinating. It's divided north-south, and for the last 40 years they have a green line. So they've created this dialogue on the Green Line. Part of the problem of the previous negotiations is that you always see the winning parties negotiating and the other parties staying outside. What this mechanism has done was bringing all the parties together. Because every time you have an agreement between the two top ones, the other people reject it. So in this case, they brought them all together to ensure there's more a sustainable process that can move on. Just briefly on Myanmar process, you're going to see the largest national dialogue in history next year. The previous largest one was Yemen of 665. The Myanmar one is going to be 1,200 people in the national dialogue for the next 3 to 4 years. So it's an extraordinary mechanism that requires extraordinary innovation and creativity to see how that works. And that's why some of these common spaces were created in a way to provide the basic fundamentals of connecting from township level to community and community level, connecting the voices of the people to a formal national process at a township level, at a regional level, and then to a union level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannes, and apologies that I had to cut you short because I think the overall presentation is very interesting, and I personally think that this concept of common space is a very promising tool for track 1.5 processes, and therefore it might even deserve to be integrated into the curriculum of the Rotary Peace Centers. Now, in a way, some of the aspects which Hannes has raised might be taken up by our next speaker, Dr. Sai Oh, who is closely related with his Pingdong Su Institute for Peace and Dialogue to these activities. He looks back at a very active biography as a democracy fighter, I would like to say, as well as a person engaged in the struggle of the ethnic groups in Myanmar to help transform the country, and has contributed significantly to education approaches which can empower disadvantaged groups in countries like Myanmar. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Herbert. And thank you to all the organizers of the event today and all the participants. It is a great honor to be here today. I will speak about my experience, the Pingdong Su Institute, the organization that I work with in facilitating the peace process in Myanmar. Myanmar is a country that's been going through a series of changes since 2011. The last has been the general election that took place 3 weeks ago, and the NLD, the major opposition, claimed the landslide victory. So we're going to see, for the first time in 50 years, in more than 50 years, a civilian-led government taking over soon. So,
is it working?
Okay.
Maybe you have
is that better?
Your
okay. Sorry. So it is an exciting time for Myanmar. Yes. When it comes to peace building in Myanmar, as Hannes just mentioned, Myanmar has the longest civil war in the world. It's nearly 70 years that Myanmar never experienced peace. And outcome of that, we have no less than 500,000 of people internally displaced and refugees. Many of them have been outflown into neighboring countries. I'm sure Thailand has been one of the countries that has been sharing this burden of trouble from Myanmar. The bottom line of this is political unsettlement coupled with oppression, inequalities, and a series of human rights violations against ethnic groups, ethnic minorities. So the current government or the outgoing government realized that without achieving peace with ethnic arms groups, the political transition that it tried to achieve will not complete. And besides, it need to want to demonstrate to the international community that Myanmar is now a safer place to do business. So this government has reached out to ethnic armed group for peace talk in 2011. For Myanmar, ethnic arms group is seized an opportunity to seek political solution to their political grievance. Ceasefire agreement in Myanmar is not new. It took place many times in the past. Some of them last longer, some of them didn't last long. But none of them ever led to political solution that addressed the bottom line, the ethnic groups' political grievance. So what the ethnic group wants is a long-lasting peace with political solution to address their political grievance through an inclusive political dialogue. But facilitating political dialogue in Myanmar is challenged by a number of complicated issues. Ethnically, officially we have 135 ethnic groups in Myanmar with many different languages and diverse culture. And we have 21 groups, at least, armed ethnic groups that politically active and fighting for their rights against the government. We have 92 political parties that contested in the general election. We have a government that's being controlled by a military. On top of these, trust is a very rare commodity in Burmese political environment. In this year, in October 15, the governments and 8 major ethnic armed groups have signed national ceasefire agreement. One of the terms in this agreement say within the 60 days of the agreement that being signed, you have to have a framework for political dialogue. And by 90 days, the first political dialogue need to be started. And this is a major challenge because all the key stakeholders, like the government, ethnic arms groups, and political party, they all have drawn up a framework for national dialogue in their own interest. There was 5 frameworks for political dialogues, but they only need one to organize a national dialogue, which Hannes just mentioned, that more than 1,000 people will come together and discuss the national issues. So anticipating all these issues, Pidong Su Institute, that the organization I work with, along with Euro-Burma Office, another Burmese NGO, have initiated an informal consultation process, which bring all these different stakeholders, the government, the ethnic armed groups, and political parties, have a consultation. The idea of this process is an inclusiveness, and that's also to bring all the principles and values from all these different frameworks and merge them into one. So it's quite a challenging process. After 7 months and 9 separate meetings, we finally have a common framework now that one framework. So this framework now will be adopted by the Supreme Political Council of the Ceasefire Committee, which is called Union Peace and Dialogues Joint Committee. So this has actually saved a lot of time and unnecessary disagreement and argument that would take place, the preparation of this informal consultation process. And this is why this is happening at the union level. The Pidong Su Institute and again with the Euro-Burma office also engage with local community organization, civil society organization at different stages. Because at the end of the day, the national dialogue, you need to ensure that the voice and concern and interests of local communities are taken into political dialogues. So this process is about giving them technical support to local community organization and community participants in order for them to be able to come up with a model of local community consultation, which is also called common space, that Hannes just mentioned. At the moment, there's about 5 different states, the Shan, the Karen, the Karenni, the Chin, and the Hmong have developed their own community consultation model, common space. The model or the design of their consultations may look slightly different, but the aims is all the same, ensuring that community voice, interests, and their concerns are included in political dialogues. I'd like to stress that out of these initiatives, the common space, the local consultation, or the informal consultation among key stakeholders, behind us, Hannes Seber, who is sitting with us today, is being one of the very key and important advisors to the process. Yeah. And what these initiatives does is it fills the gap in Myanmar's peace process. Without these informal consultation among key stakeholders, or without these community consultation process, the peace process in Myanmar today, we have a lot more issues to be handled by. So I'd like to stop here and thank you to everyone. I would like to, I'm happy to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sai-O. I think a strong message from you is how important it is to have capacities available, like the resources from your institute, to support the very complicated transition processes which the country is now facing, and to provide knowledge and skills in this respect. Now we have about 10, maximum 15 minutes for any questions or comments you have with respect to any of the topics raised here in the panel. I would like you to first share your name and then put forward a rather short question or comment, please. There's a microphone here. I don't know if there is a mobile microphone. Surichai, is there one? Can those of you who would like to put forward a question or a comment come to the front here and use that microphone there, please? No questions? Okay. Can you please come to the front, because I think we have no mobile microphones. And others among you who would like to put forward question or comment, maybe you already join here so that we can move quickly. Oh, I thought that was... Oh, you can also speak from there, yes.
Thank you very much for the opportunities. Since there are 3 speakers here that focus on Burma, my name is Wun'gaeo from the Korean Women's Organization. We are one of the civil societies in Burma. I would like to know about in your presentation you mentioned about the common space and the safety. Particularly, you also mentioned that in the national ceasefire there are 8 ethnic groups, armed ethnic groups that's signing, but there are still like 21, 8 out of 21, so there are still 13 groups. So what are the common space for the 13 groups that are not signing the nationwide ceasefire? And also, is there any discussion in the developing of the political framework, like how we are going to end the conflicts, especially in the north of Burma, because they are currently continue fighting in Shan and Kachin states. So how we are going to make sure that these armed ethnic groups, because they are very strong as well, and so and they are not included in the space here. So what are the common space and how we are going to include them? Because if we're talking about peace in Burma, I think it's very important that they are also included in the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions, comments? Yeah, there's one. I propose that we collect them and then respond in one go after that.
Good morning, Your Excellency and ladies and gentlemen. I'm Police Major Piapom Mekianon from Thailand. Let me first introduce myself very briefly. I worked for United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operation in 2010 in Haiti, and currently I'm serving as a police advisor at United Nations Peacekeeping in South Sudan. As many of you may know that in South Sudan, their conflict has been broken in 2013 between the two parties, between President Chawakir and ex-President Riek Machar. And the results of the conflict, there are many people die and 2 million people forced to leave their home. And just recent month, in August this year, the two parties have been signed the peace agreement. And the content of the peace agreement is mentioned about power sharing. And another issue in the this agreement is to bring the perpetrator of the war crime and crime against humanity to justice. But the thing is, many of you may know that South Sudan is not a party of the Rome Statute. And if you, United Nations Security Council can refer the case to ICC. But the thing is, if you want to make peace process, this is really difficult part because you have.
Can you come to an end, please?
Huh?
Can you come to an end of your comment? Because we.
Okay, sorry. My question is, if you want, this is very challenging part, and what do you think that, how can you bring the perpetrator, because all the parties commit war crime, so how to bring both parties to justice? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have to move to our final comments from my panelist colleagues here, because the first 2 points were on Myanmar. I would like to ask you both first to respond, and then maybe you, Hannes.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I believe that the question is about common space that I mentioned that took place in the different ethnic groups, different ethnic states. And because the time for my presentation is 10 minutes, it's difficult to keep all the scope of the complexity of the ceasefire business in Myanmar. But it's true that Myanmar is known at least about 21 ethnic armed groups politically active, but only 8 of them have signed the ceasefire. But this is often that general public got very confused what's happening with this ceasefire. And I actually brought a table, but I'm not ready to show it. The 21 group, as we need to break down and understand it, just to quickly go is, in August this year, the ethnic representative, which represent 16 groups, and the government agreed that we all have a final draft of this national ceasefire agreement, and they all ready to sign it. But there's 3 groups that did not include in this One of them is United War State Army, and then another is called Myanmar Democratic Alliance Army, which also known as Meng. These groups never participated in the negotiation for the national ceasefire from the beginning, but they do not against this negotiation. The issue is that they haven't bilateral ceasefire with the government, and the WA would say we never have a single problem with the government for the past 20 years, and we don't want to sign another agreement, but we're interested in to join the political dialogues. That's why it's tough. And out of the 16 armed groups, the government sent out invitation to 15 groups. And you might also want what happened to some other group. There's a complication here. 3 out of the 21 groups formed after the peace offer was, the peace talks offered to ethnic groups. So these, in Myanmar's peace process, all these groups, they usually sign bilateral ceasefire with the government, and where they basically define their territory or where they control. And a group that doesn't have bilateral ceasefire, it would create complexity of the national ceasefire agreement. So the government insists on signing bilateral ceasefire for the 3 groups before they can sign this. And then another 3 groups, which also participate in the negotiation for the national ceasefire, but these groups don't really have substantial armed force behind them, and the government insists that, look, if we never fight, why would you need to sign a ceasefire? You can just come and join the political dialogues. So that become. So out of these 15 groups, 8 of them signed the ceasefire group. And I'm going back to the Common Space Initiative. What I mentioned, the Common Space at this level is more about creating a space for local community participation, where local activists, civil society organization, local authority, in some case, local ethnic armed groups who come together. And the question I remember from Wun'gaeo, in the northern part of Myanmar, the fighting between the government force and the ethnic army is still going on. How can they be participated into? It's true that some place the fighting has not stopped, but these are isolated cases we have to keep in mind. In the northern part of Myanmar, in Kachin State, the initiative for local participation has been started for more than 2 years ago. But it may not call common space, but there's a engagement between community and the local authority to find a way to create a more local consultation process.
Okay. I would like to give Hannes the floor, very short, on the common space question, and then the final words from Christine.
I have a bit of a hearing problem, so I hope I understood your question correctly. So I will just quickly make 3 comments on the common spaces related to your question. Number 1 is none of these were a project of anybody. Basically, these were dialogues that emerged in different states. In Kaya, you had very vigorous dialogue moving. In Shan, you had 22 different networks coming together, mobilizing on land, on environmental issues, on drugs issues. In Karen State, you had similar things on a new economic master plan, on land issues, and so forth. So you've seen community research at one level, and then you've seen a development slowly of dialogue forums that has emerged. What the attempt was in the last year and a half was how do we support these, particularly if you look at building an infrastructure for this national dialogue. That's the latest design of the national dialogue, where you see they're going to have formal dialogues in 14 different regions, 7 ethnic states 7 regions and then a formal national dialogue. So how do you build the infrastructure for that? So the attempt was looking at, in the emergence of what is happening at the moment inside each state, where there's ongoing negotiations on key issues, how can that peace assets of processes, of people, of ongoing negotiations that's going on, how can that be utilized and be supportive of the more formal process? And so each of these regional spaces look completely different. And they've emerged out of different contexts. But they have similar and common elements and structures that we've tried to strengthen in support of your formal process. And that's what they basically, that they emerge in terms of coming together to support a formal process, but not just the formal union dialogue or state-based dialogue, but also addressing ongoing issues of drugs, of trafficking, of natural resources, of land disputes, and so forth. So it is instruments to resolve ongoing conflict, which was their original purpose. But it's also instruments to bring the voices from the people up to the regional processes, but ongoing support mechanisms of the overall process.
Thank you. Now, regarding the question in relation to the South Sudan conflict and bringing opposing parties together, I would just say that I think there is really a need for a person to be identified from both sides that are open to talk, at least to meet the other. But then the environment has to be created for that to happen. And maybe that is done by, again, outsiders or insiders also to again, facilitate some type of an environment for this talking to take place. And then to me, the next is you have the dialogue or the meeting, the face-to-face, where each person can see the other as a person and not as an adversary. But again, to me, this is a really long process that, will take a very long time, and you must all have lots of patience.
Thank you. The last words from Dr. Maung.
Well, I was asked to give a brief note about the situation of Myanmar about 3 weeks ago, and I sent it and printed. Now it is printed in this book, but it has already become a history. When I wrote this, it was before the elections, and until about 2 weeks ago, Myanmar was in the spotlight internationally. But when all these terrorist attacks in Paris and in other parts of the world, the media shifted, and it's so natural. But anyway, we are looking forward to the new Myanmar in the very near future, hopefully. And like my colleagues are saying, the new government, I hope, that would create a framework to have a common space for all stakeholders, including the civilians, the citizens, and the representatives of the citizens can have a chance to talk about peace and reconciliation. And it seems like, although it is going to start to take place next by the end of this month, next week, but I hope that it would be concretely formed and framed by the new government in the not too far future. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, although the time is short, and thank you, Dr. Ropers.
Thanks to all the panelists.
One of the things that you'll notice from Dr. Roper's introductory remarks this morning is that we're not using bios. And he said, I'm really not going to read a lengthy bio. We're sort of going to get right down to business. You can read bios in the guide to the conference. But what's nice is when these seasoned peace builders speak, they have so much experience that their stories speak volumes about their credentials and their backgrounds and their capabilities, and that was very much on display. I think another thing that was on display was the elephant that is always in the room with peace builders and peace building is what tangible results have you achieved from your peace building efforts? What has actually changed? And you'll notice that these peace builders start out quite modestly, noting that they're entering situations where conflict, very intense conflict, may have been in play for decades. And in fact, in Dr. Yin's case, he said, you start out slowly, you start by trying to get people just to agree on what their definition or notion of peace is. You begin to gather people around and try and achieve some level of alignment. And he spoke very modestly about that. But then the examples they gave were things like bringing together dialogues of 1,200 people at a time, 1,200 people across diverse interests, diverse needs, diverse histories, diverse issues and stories, and being able to have them somehow cooperate in a national dialogue to the tune of 22 networks at a time, 1,200 people at a time. So really what you showed us is that perhaps the name of your panel, Evolving the State of the Art of Peace Building, needs to be changed. When you do it in the future, it should be accelerating or driving or forwarding, because those are really the examples that you gave us. And the fact that you gave us those examples and showed how these sorts of things take place in a span of a few years in the face of decades of conflict is really quite miraculous. So thank you for that, those stories. So also under the heading of accelerating or fast forwarding, the organizers have chosen to postpone, or let's say not have a mini coffee break this morning, so that we can hear from our last speaker, a very important guest, and then move on to lunch and allow you to enjoy as much of your lunch as possible. So our last speaker of the morning, and excuse me one second. Our last speaker of the morning in some ways needs no introduction. You saw him in the video. It is Mr. Bhichai Rattakul, who is very well known in the Rotary Peace Centers. He's very well known amongst most of the audience that's in this room today, and he should be. He is the Rotary International, he's a Rotary International past president. He's also a former foreign minister and deputy prime minister of Thailand. And for those of you who have had, as a consequence of being a Rotary Peace Fellow, the opportunity to hear from him, it's quite an honor. In the class where he spoke, my class, which was class 13, he shared the reasons why the Peace Centers was a gleam in anyone's eye at one point. He also shared elements of his vast experience representing Thailand in a variety of situations. He spoke to us at length about what it is like to address conflict and try and build bridges in Southeast Asia. And I remember leaning forward when he spoke about building bridges with leaders who, in countries where two countries may have been at great odds at one point. And someone in the class asked him, how did you do that? What does it take? How were you able to do that? And his simple answer was, when you're operating on behalf of your people, you're willing to build bridges. And I called home that night and said, I met a hero today. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Bhichai Rattakul. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me loud and clear? A time passes by so quickly. And imagine this program started 10 years ago. I am not a diplomat, nor am I a professor teaching international politics or teaching anything at all. I am just one layman, but who is very keen in peacemaking. And this very program here was initiated by me 12 years ago when I was proposing this program to Rotary International. And it took me 2 years before I could convince them that this is a program that a layman like myself and like many others could learn a lot. And I'm so happy to see so many alumni here. Who are the alumni? Could you please raise your hand? Oh, good, excellent, excellent. Do I look older than the last time you saw me? No. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Today, as we celebrate the 10th anniversary, I'm happy that we have also the experts who touch on a very few subjects, and also the alumni who are here on their own, as well as on Rotary sponsorship. This program, Rotary actually has such a program, peace program, I mean, for many years. We have had what we call the scholarship program for the undergrad to study for 2 years for their master's degree. Not only focusing on peace alone, but as well as on other fields as well. But I was thinking of myself that those after graduation, it was difficult for them, and it's still difficult for them, to find job which would coincide with what they have learned at the university. So the idea crops up that we should have a special program, an intensive program, whereby we want those people who are going to study, take up this program, who already are employed, and in this kind of a work, in peace building or conflict resolution. For intensive, 3 months intensive program. And after that, we hope that they will be able to go back home and do what they have learned here. I think we have here an expert in the person of Professor Woodhouse here. Where are you at the back? I think somewhere. Oh, there you are. I'm so glad to see you here again. And you are responsible. You're responsible indeed for the success of this short program of Rotary International. As I've said earlier, I'm not an expert in this matter, but I'm very keen in this matter, for the mere reason that I have had some experience in trying to resolve conflicts with other countries. And this was so many years ago. Of course, I do not know much about the details about what happened in Paris just a few weeks ago. That's a horrible thing, isn't it? But I want to refer something which took place many decades ago, which I have tried my best to resolve the conflict. As students will probably know that in 1972, that's way back, when Kissinger went to Beijing through Pakistan in order to meet with the leadership of China in the hope to formalize the relationship between the US and China. I was then a politician, and I told my government at that time that there is something funny is going on. Kissinger sneaking like a James Bond through Pakistan, going up to China, to Beijing, and try to talk with the Chinese government to formalize the relationship. There must be something wrong with the US policy. Not something wrong, something right for the US policy to do that. But this is not at all easy. After having been confronting each other for so long, that Kissinger has to do something very secretly. Therefore, I was saying that he was acting like James Bond, going through this way, that way, so forth and so on. But at least he succeeded in formalizing diplomatic relations with China, not immediately after that, but after Nixon also went there, after Kissinger. I told my government, therefore, that the Thai policy towards China must also change. We must modify our policy, because the Americans, we have been fighting side by side with Americans in Indochina for so many years, in Korea, in Indochina, and now we are fighting against the Communist Party of China. So once Kissinger started to do that, I told my government that we got to do something. With that proposal, the government has given me the permission to go to China myself. So it was my first trip to China in 1975. At that time, 1975, China and Thailand has no diplomatic relations. I went to China, and my counterpart was the Deputy Foreign Minister of China, of Beijing, of the People's Republic, and that was Han Nen Lung, who is now dead. He couldn't compete with me as far as age is concerned. I had a long talk with him, a few days with him, with Han Nen Lung. Unfortunately, I did not meet with Zhu Enlai nor Mao Zedong. But I did meet with Han Nen Lung, the Deputy Foreign Minister, who was the key maker, who was the responsible as far as politics in Asia is concerned. We have had 2-3 days discussion how to normalize the relationship between the two countries. I think there were many, many problems. But we have been able to resolve all those problems. We have agreed on all the conflicts, all the problems which were then existed. But there was one problem which we could not agree to. The only one problem which we could not agree to, and that was the problem regarding China proposed to Thailand that if Thailand wants to formalize diplomatic relations with China, Thailand must accept one thing. That is their proposal. And that one thing is that they are willing to formalize, to recognize Thailand, to formalize diplomatic relations, but at the same time, they will formalize, they will recognize the Communist Party of Thailand. So it means that while having diplomatic relations with Thailand, a formal, official diplomatic relations with Thailand, China insisted upon having relations with the Communist Party of Thailand. So I told Han Nen Lung that I can't go back home and tell my people about this. Who would believe me? A government-to-government, G-to-G relationship, at the same time P-to-P, party-to-party relationship. How can one person put on two hats? That's what I told him. He said, this is our policy. He has to insist upon that. If Thailand wants to be friendly with him, he will continue, China will continue to have good relationship with the Communist Party of Thailand. But the Communist Party of Thailand was an illegal entity, illegal organization. And we have a very strict law against communism at that time. So we said, all right, in that case, since we have agreed on everything except this one point, therefore, why don't we put this point aside for a while? Instead of arguing, they insisted upon that. I said, no, this isn't important. No, what's the use of doing that? Wasting my time, wasting your. We discuss this later on. And they agreed to that. They agreed to that. I was very happy that at least there was a way out. So this is one lesson which I have been telling my friends all the time, that if there isn't a conflict at all, if no one can resolve that conflict, put it aside for a while. And then go ahead with other conflict, with other matters, which we could solve, the other matters. Those problems which could not solve, put it aside for a while. And fortunately, that issue between myself and Han Nen Lung was never raised, was never mentioned again. Time did heal many flaws. Into myself, in my own feeling, I feel that when we talk about peace, I think peace will have to start from the ground, from the grassroots. Peace will have to start from the base, from where our 2 feet are standing. And it has to be built brick by brick, timber by timber, before we could reach the ultimate goal of coming to a compromise or whatever it is, a settlement. Therefore, peace is not just a piece of paper. It is a real thing that we should try to do. But after the World War, during the World War, I was a young man at that time, still quite handsome at that time. And I was arrested by the Japanese military for a few days without any food. And I thought that we have to do something to avoid any conflicts or peace. So recently, the Thai people will remember what His Majesty the King advised regarding the problem in the southern part of the country. His Majesty the King proposed 3 points. เข้าใจ เข้าถึง พัฒนา เข้าใจ means to understand the situation. เข้าถึง means to be able to reach the core, the problem, and พัฒนา development. These 3 points, I think, are very important. Of course, we can't use these 3 points as a concept to resolve the matter in Paris just a few weeks ago, or in the Middle East, or with Syria right now, or with the Soviet Union and Turkey. We can't. It's too big an issue. But as far as the issue down there in the south of Thailand, I think His Majesty the King's advice was and is a very good advice. เข้าใจ เข้าถึง พัฒนา understand, and you must be able to reach and develop. I think that if the government does that, one day we will have peace. I was told that Kun Ankana, the member of the Human Rights Commission, is here. Are you here, Kun Ankana? Could you please press your hand? Oh, Kun Ankana, could you please press your hand? I can't see. Oh, there you are. Yes, I remember you. I recognize you now. I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate you. I know how you feel in your heart. I know. But you have the courage and the determination to do the right things, to right the wrong. And I'm happy that you are a member of the Human Rights Commission of Thailand now. I think with your experience, with your past, with the events which took place, you will be able to do a lot. I think when we talk about World War II, the conflicts after World War II, I think, are more than the World War II. While we were fighting during the World War II, we knew exactly whom we are fighting. The Allies were fighting against Hitler. Over here we were fighting against the Japanese, so on and so on. It was quite clear where the enemies were, where the friends were. So it was much easier to resolve the matter. So the World War ends in 4 years' time. But what is happening right now in every place, in every dot of the world, there are conflicts, there are problems everywhere. And I'm quite sure that it will continue to be so, which could lead to World War III. I do not know. But if it's World War III, if it turned up to be World War III, I would say it would be easier to resolve the matter rather than trying to resolve the matter right now, which takes place in all parts of the globe. Now, this special program, the peace program of Rotary, as I mentioned earlier, is 10 years old. I hope that the alumni who are here, after you have all graduated, I hope you have done a lot of things when you return, after you're returning to your home. You have done a lot of things which I have in mind and Rotary has in mind. that you will do something of what you have learned here to resolve any conflicts in your hometown, in your village, in your country. I have only a few more things to say, that it is not only China that I have had the experience I told you. I also have had a very bad experience, not bad experience, a very dangerous experience with Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge. I was the first foreigner to meet Pol Pot. I was the first foreigner of the world to meet Pol Pot in Ieng Sari to try to resolve the matter between Thailand and Cambodia, because they were laying mines, killing people along the border, so forth and so on. As far as Vietnam is concerned, I also have had some experience dealing with Vietnam. One more point, like Beijing. While I was discussing with Vietnam, everything was settled, everything was resolved, except one point. The Vietnamese Deputy Prime Minister, I was at that time his counterpart also. He was Deputy Prime Minister as well as Foreign Minister. I was Deputy Prime Minister. Oh, no, sorry, I was Foreign Minister only. Everything was agreed except one point. And that one point was, after the American has withdrawn from Vietnam, the Americans had took away all the weapons and ammunition into Thailand and stored into Thailand. What the Vietnamese want is that if Thailand and Vietnam wants to establish diplomatic relations, they would like to have all these weapons being stored in Thailand back into Vietnam for them to use. Here again, we have had quite a hot debate. In the end, I told them, the guy also is dead. Nguyen Duy Trinh, the Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam. I told him again that, what can I do? Because these ammunitions and arms and tanks and planes are not mine. They belong to Americans. The Americans took them to Thailand after the American has to withdraw from Vietnam. You are claiming that these planes and tanks and ammunition belong to you, and they claim that owners. Therefore, the only way to do is that you two get together and talk. Whatever decision you make, you come and tell me, and I'll let you have it, all those tanks and planes back. But at the same time, after those planes and tanks and bullets, whatever it is, ammunition, by ourselves, we will have to use soldiers to look after those war weapons. Now, after you have agreed, whoever agreed what to do, if you want to take these weapons back, ammunition back, you've got to pay me the rent and the soldiers, which we have to employ the soldiers to look after this. Would you agree to that? Otherwise, why should we spend the money of looking after these weapons? And I told him later on that actually what I've said to you, it was just a joke. I did not really mean it. But I said, but still, you have claimed to be the owner, the U.S. has claimed to be the owner, Therefore, you two must talk together. To sum up, I think to seek peace and resolve the conflict, it has to be started from the base. I repeat that always. I always repeat that. If the people do not, if we do not start from the base, from where our feet are located, we won't be able to achieve peace at all. This will apply, I think, also in the various spots around the world. I have only this to tell you. It's lunch time now, over lunchtime. I want to say thank you once again for giving me this chance to say a few words with you and to listen to the experts on the panel just now, especially to see Kun Angkana, whom I have never met in person before, except in the papers here. And the lady who has lost, her husband disappeared, and like Kun Angkana's husband has just disappeared. And something has to be done about that. How, I do not know. Only the experts and the government will have to do that. Thank you once again, and welcome the alumni. I miss all of you very much, and it's good to see you back here.
So I hope you can see why Mr. Bhichai Rattakul is one of my heroes, and he should be a hero to us all with such unique experiences and to be so kind and so strong in the face of such great challenges. As he said, we're about to break for lunch, and you know there's a rule that good things come in threes, but in our case, the rest of the day really comes in fives. And the fives go like this. You're going to break for lunch. And there are really kind of two tracks for lunch. And the original plan was for lunch to last almost 2 hours. Really, we should be back at still 1 o'clock. Let me check with the organizers. Still 1 o'clock? I'm sure, yes, I got a thumbs up. So still, we should be back by about 1 o'clock. There are two tracks. One track is a lunch track over in the Deepak Jain room. The Deepak Jain room over in Sasa International House. And that, due to space limitations, is a gathering for Rotary Peace Fellow alumni and their guests. So we will see you over there. For others, there are lots of wonderful places to enjoy lunch around. You know, close by is MBK. There's also a place in Sasa International House, and there are a variety of options very close by. For those of you who would like to propose innovation lab ideas, again, here is your board, and there are markers up here. You know, please be sure to put down an idea, a topic that you'd like to cover in the innovation lab later this afternoon, so that people can see the topics when we come back from lunch. Prior to the innovation labs and after lunch, there will be the breakout sessions, and there are 4 really great topics today. The 4 topics today are women in peace building, community mediation, community peace building, and youth engagement and peace building. And so I hope you're looking forward to those breakout sessions too. There are a lot of great participants, and I'm sure they'll be quite interesting. There's a break between the breakout sessions and the innovation labs. So again, you can look for topics and decide where you want to go for the innovation labs. After the innovation labs, we'll come back here briefly for about 20-25 minutes, and we'll hear just the shortest of summary outcomes from the breakout sessions and anything anybody wants to add from the innovation labs. So that will round out the day. And then tonight, after a break between that last session, there is a film. It's an Asian film, the Asian premiere of the film that is known as, it's in the agenda, but the film is called Don't Think I've Forgotten, Cambodia's Last Rock and Roll. And the film will be shown with the executive producer, Mr. Chang, who is also the executive director of DCAM Cambodia, or DCCAM Cambodia. So it's supposed to be a terrific film. I'm sure it'll be a terrific discussion afterward. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon.